Welcome to the X-Line, the show all about the Fujifilm X-Series cameras and the stories behind the gear. I'm Mark Sadowski, and this is episode 6. In this episode, we talked to Andrew Billington, an amazing Fuji wedding photographer from the UK. I recorded this a couple weeks ago, and it was such a fun time chatting with him. I mean, the stories were great. He was just off the hook fun to talk with. So I want to thank Andrew for taking the time to have such a fun conversation and sharing his stories. It was a blast. But before we dive in, I wanted to thank you, the listeners. For starters, thank you very much for the 5-star ratings that we've been receiving on iTunes. That helps us in the search results for iTunes, and it's always great listening to other people's ratings and reviews, so it's much appreciated. So thank you for the 5 stars, and please keep them coming. I mean, like I said, it's the best and freest way to help us. The second I wanted to share, you can always find this show on Instagram. Whenever I talk about a particular image that I photographed, I usually throw it on the X-Line Show Instagram account, and you can always find that at X-Line Show. And finally, I just wanted to mention the X-Line Show's Twitter account. I started this a while ago, but never announced it, never gave it any formal kind of introduction. But today I wanted to announce that you can follow this show on Twitter by going to @Xline Show. And I'm going to post updates to the website, updates to upcoming interviews, things like that. And hopefully there'll be more to come. I want to do possibly some photo walks in the New England area, at least, seeing as I live here. But anyway, keep up with the show at Xline Show on Twitter. And as always, if you want to leave us a comment and don't want to go to any of those sources, go directly to the source at thexline.com. And you can always leave a comment under the show posts, and I'll be sure to see it there too. So thank you very much again for listening, and let's get started with this interview. Hello, everybody. This week we have the amazing Andrew Billington, a Fuji X photographer and just an extraordinary photographer all around. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing very well. You might need to start this again. I'm not an official Fuji X photographer.
That's okay. Neither am I.
Oh, okay. I didn't know whether you were talking about the Fuji X series or you're just talking about, the Fuji X photographers, because I just use the things.
Same here. I believe it or not, even though this is a podcast entirely devoted to Fuji, I still use my Canon. I have not crossed that threshold just yet. And
are you using your Canon for what? For all your professional stuff, or
I use
just some of it?
All right. So for wedding photography, I use. I'm hovering at 50-50. And right. Here's where I absolutely have to use my Canon as a crutch, because here in New England, where the old churches are ironically very, very dark, it's hard to get that procession inward. And there are many times where the bridesmaids will, instead of walk down the aisle, they will, in succession, walk at a pace as though they were escaping the plague.
Yeah, that's the strangest thing, isn't it? You think they sort of go against the lovely, sedate pace of the music, and they sort of get to the top of the aisle, and then it seems to be, it's like who can get down there the fastest.
Yes.
It's like the first one to get down to a groomsman wins.
This is an organ, not dubstep.
Yeah, it is quite bizarre. But I'll slightly see. We're going to start already on this. I'll slightly take issue with you on dark churches and using Fuji stuff, because
England has me
England
beat.
In winter, the churches in England in winter are dark.
Yeah,
and I've been using my Fujis now for at least 2.5 years full time on weddings, and I've not gone, I need to grab my Canon for this or anything like that. I just gone, I'm just going to make it work.
Right on.
And it works.
Well, now you know the real reason why you're on. I've created this entire podcast just to help me with my own miserable skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great way of getting a one-to-one free. It's awesome.
Right. But anyway, your photography is amazing. Just from my personal searches, when I discovered the Fuji system, the first photographer that I came across was Kevin Mullins, who we already interviewed, and the second person was you.
Right.
And because and what fascinates me about you is that while Kevin uses the no speed lights on his camera system essentially whatsoever, you actually do. And
Kevin doesn't like the flash.
He doesn't, and I personally love speedlights. I don't shy away from them. I embrace them and call them my brother.
But I must admit though, the only time I tend to use flash is in the evenings for dancing.
Yes,
I don't tend to employ it any of the rest of the time, although the rest of the time I'm finding available light and I'm using the light that's there, and that's the look I like for anything other than dancing. And then when I get to the dancing, I sort of think, yeah, they got used to me being here. It's a bit more relaxed. It's a bit more nightclubby. I'm just going to get up in people's faces with a flash, and work it that way.
Right on. So, okay. Hold that thought. Let's rewind to the very beginning and go into your origin stories and talk about the time before Fuji.
Those dark days.
They were where we were Atlas-like lifting heavy gear and
yeah.
Although in my case, I'm still lifting heavy gear from time to time. So what were you using, or I guess what were you doing before Fuji? Were you photographing weddings still? With
when I started photographing professionally, I'll rewind right the way back to the origin story. And, I started in theatre. I was working in theatre for 20 years before I sort of crossed over to become a professional photographer. And at the sort of dawn of the digital age of cameras, I was going on holiday. I thought I need a camera. And I bought a very small little point and shoot, and it's about 2003, I would have thought. So it was like 1 megapixel or something, probably less than that. And I just started using it on holiday and thought, yeah, I really enjoy this, because I used film cameras as a kid growing up and loved that, and gone off and done all the sort of processing myself and all that stuff. So the real hands-on stuff. Mm-hmm. And then got back into photography when digital came back in again, and started thinking, I like this. I bought my first sort of what I consider decent camera, which was a Canon 300D, or the Rebel, I think, as you call it over there.
Yeah.
So it was a Canon Rebel, and started using that around the theatre, and again loved it. And for me, it was about taking photographs as I do now of things as they were happening, rather than doing lots of pose photographs or going, hey guys, let's all do this and go over there and make this photograph. It was very much documentary storytelling of what was happening around the theatre, what was happening in rehearsal rooms and things like that. Yeah. And I slowly started to get commissioned to do that sort of work, and the Arts Council in England commissioned me to do some work very early on with artists going to schools, and so I was doing that, and I was running a sort of, as a lot of people do, a photography business alongside my full-time job, which was working in theatre.
Yeah.
So if you put those two together, I've never really had a proper job. It's always just been fun. Going to work has always been fun for me. But
I love you and hate you at the same time.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, anybody that's listening to this on their lunchtime in their office, eating their cheese sandwich, hating their boss, I'm really, really sorry. But
It's all good.
So, I mean, if you tend to walk around photographing stuff, people at some point somebody's going to say, "Do you photograph weddings?" And,
Yes.
yeah, because that's what happens. Because that's the only time they sort of encounter a professional photographer. So my response was always, "I do, or I will, but it will be in the way that I photograph stuff now." So it was very documentary, very unposed. Because until I started photographing weddings, I'd only ever been to one wedding. I didn't really know what weddings were about. So I thought, what if I could just, rather than try to be try and do all that wedding photographer thing of going, oh, I know what happens and what weddings look like. I thought, well, you just turn up and you photograph what's happening. That seems to be the best way to do it. So I got my Canon Rebel and I bought a second body because, at least I thought if you're going to do this, you do this properly. You make sure you've got spare everything and you buy decent lenses and you do it. So I started off as every wedding photographer feels they should do, with a sort of 24-70, 70-200 and two bodies and charging in there and just sort of sticking my camera in people's faces and not really knowing what I was doing. But through trial and error and actually I think doing what I felt was the right way for me to photograph weddings, I slowly sort of built up a visual language that I was happy with, and again, the more you do things, the more you discover what works and what doesn't. And really, I went through it was a series of sort of trial and error at people's weddings. I mean, there was always a sort of hopefully a base level of that stuff works, and I'm covering what I need to get. But I was learning with every wedding that I shot.
Right on.
Which is always a good thing to do. And also, when I started out, I didn't charge a lot of money because I didn't think that was fair. I thought, I'm learning, all right, you're gonna spend some money on a wedding photographer, but if you're hiring somebody that's also learning on the job, I didn't feel it was fair to sort of immediately come in at, I don't know what sort of $2,000-3,000.
I was in the same boat.
Dollars equivalent. No, I was charging, I think, around about sort of $800,000-900,000 for the first 2-3 years of shooting weddings.
Yeah,
I thought that was fair.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. Again, I also started with a digital Rebel, probably the same Rebel that you're talking about.
Yeah,
and oh man, that it was a little guy, but it was a powerhouse.
Yeah, great camera.
Oh, I still have it. I still love it. The parallel between what you were describing and what I went through is strangely similar, except, believe it or not, my first point and shoot camera was a Fuji.
Oh, right.
Fuji S7000 saved my life.
Right.
So I was an ex-shooter before everybody. I was first. Exactly. No, but
just be a trailblazer.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I was charging about $600 per wedding for first couple of years, and I think one of my first mistakes was in memory cards choices, because back then 2 gigs was like, it was like you're spending hundreds of dollars.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So to save some money, I actually bought this very mini hard drive that had moving parts in it. So it was a memory card, but it had the spinning disc and everything.
Oh, is that a micro drive?
Micro drives, yes.
That's the one. Yeah, I had one of those. Yeah, I had some of those.
Yeah, I quickly learned how bad they are sometimes.
Yeah, not good. Not good at all. Absolutely.
But, c'est la vie. Live and learn.
Yeah, but I mean, until I, and that's how I shot weddings for years. I mean, one of the big changing points in the way that I worked and in the way that I approached weddings was when I switched from that sort of 24-70, well, the 70-200 didn't last long because it was way too big a lens and way too heavy a lens, I felt, for taking to weddings. I know people love it and they love the look they get from it, but it's just, you're so obvious.
Yeah.
That as soon as that, particularly if you shoot Canon, as soon as that big grey thing gets raised in the air, everybody turns around to look at the guy with the big camera, and it's like, yeah, that ruined the moment for me. So my switch to using prime lenses was a real watermark in the way that I worked. So I very quickly changed to originally a sort of 35-85 combo for a wedding day. And it was small. It was relatively, certainly much lighter than, still attached to the sort of Canons than it used to be. And that really helped, again, I think, to develop my photography, because you have to start to learn to zoom with your feet. You have to start to learn to frame the shot without zooming. You got to walk to it. You got to say, that's the shot I want, and you make it, and then you move to the next one.
Yes.
Because I very rarely crop any photographs. I tend to shoot it all in camera how I want it. And the only thing I'll tend to do is straighten, because for some reason I can't shoot a straight horizon to save my life.
Oh my God. Amen, brother.
It's horrendous. It's horrendous. I swear I've got one leg at least half a foot shorter than the other, because it's just like, why would you tilt that? But I just did. So anyway, so that's all I tend to do. But still, I was shooting weddings with I think by the time I switched to Fuji, my setup was 5D Mark III, and I had been shooting with the 1D Mark IV, which is a big black brick, fantastic camera, but by the end of a wedding, I'm shooting those on dual straps, and by the end of the wedding day, I was absolutely just
buffed.
on my knee. It was awful, and
yes.
And so I looked at the Fuji as a way of getting a smaller camera that was lighter, that I knew I could wander, but also I think the joy of it for me, when particularly when I saw the specs for the XT1, were that everything that I wanted, everything I wanted to adjust during a wedding day was on the top plate. I never needed to go look in the back to a menu.
Yeah,
I could just twirl some dials, and that was awesome, because that just meant I could walk around still looking at the scene, just making adjustments on the top of my camera, and know that it was ready to shoot.
So let's talk about that. You're switching to Fuji. Like, what was the first camera that you picked up, and like what was that allure? I
think the first camera I picked up was the X100.
Yeah,
and I know you've spoken to Kevin Mullins.
Yes,
and Kevin. I saw Kevin, and he was talking about that camera, and I thought that looks interesting. So really, it was Kevin that inspired me to go and pick up that camera. And I left the talk that he was doing, walked out, bought the camera, started playing with it. And to be honest, I thought it's okay, but I wasn't really a fan of the autofocus. It was a bit of a sort of dog to work with to start off with.
Yeah, autofocus was horrendous.
Yeah, and what I didn't do is probably didn't give it enough time, and I was just I'd love this to work, but it's not really working for me. So I sort of put it down again for 6 months or so, until the X Pro one came out, and I thought that's the one. I bought an X Pro one and actually started using it at weddings.
Nice.
And that was the sort of, this works. This is great. Loved the look of just the files you got from it, because it had a very sort of filmic look about it straight out the box. No need for VSC or anything like that. It was just a lovely look to the files.
That's what kept me with the X100, because when I had originally rented it for a wedding, I only used it for like just certain scenes that didn't involve a lot of movement, so there wasn't a lot of autofocus to deal with. But just the output, there was just some intangible quality of the JPEGs that I could toss the raw files. I was like, eh. But but those JPEGs,
it was a bit like, I don't know if you ever used a Canon 5D, the original 5D.
Yes, I still have that too.
The look of those files. Do you sell anything or just keep them?
All right. Here's a little tangent, and I talked about this in a previous podcast. I am very, very sentimental with my camera equipment, because I was sick for a long time, and that Fuji S7000, when I say it saved my life, I don't mean that tongue in cheek, a little tongue in cheek, but there was just something about it that just felt so good to me. So when I personally connect with a camera, I will, you know, I want to keep it. And when I lent that camera to my brother-in-law, who's a piece of crap, I hope he's not listening. My wife doesn't listen to the show.
Okay, I'd love to. Yeah, Christmas around your house must be great.
Oh, it's amazing. It's not as bad as previous years. So when that's a whole other podcast, my friend.
Yeah, let's not go into that now. Yeah, that's something else.
But anyway, he treated it like crap, and it broke. And that was the first time that was like, that was my baby. And so now I just all the sentimental cameras stay. So for example, I had recently repurchased an S7000 just to keep on my table. That's not going anywhere. My original Canon 5D will forever stay with me. My Canon 5D Mark III, I could sell that when it's time.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be attached to that. And the lenses, I'll probably hang on to the 24-70 just for sentimental reasons, but the other stuff, get out of here.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. So, I mean, I'm not as sentimental as you about cameras. I just sort of forget to sell them. I've got a X100S and my X Pro 1 that I really should sell because I've got a 100T and I've got two X Pro 2, so I don't need the X Pro 1, but it's still there. But
yeah,
I sort of think I just keep meaning to sell it. So, you know.
If
anybody's looking for one and they want to get in touch with me, that's fine. I'll sell you my X Pro 1.
There you go. Reaching out to everybody. So
yeah.
So all right. So the files were amazing. The JPEG quality. So do you shoot JPEG only, or do you also have RAW in there as well? I still, even with the dual slot on the X Pro 2 now, I just shoot JPEGs. Nice.
I know you get it right for me and for the look that I'm after, and for how I process stuff. I don't need all the information that's on the RAW file. If I get it right in camera and I pull that fantastic JPEG that the Fuji processing inside the camera produces so well, I don't need the RAW file to fall back on.
Yeah.
So it really helps my workflow. I mean, I think because again, Kevin was the same. I think recently he's shooting RAWs and JPEGs.
No, just because he can.
Yeah, just because exactly. And I just tend to shoot JPEGs to both slots. One with a big 64 gig card in that stays in for 3, 4, 5 weddings until I filled it, and then hopefully by that time I've delivered those weddings and I don't need that safety. But I always I just shoot the two now because you've just got the safety. If one card goes south, I've actually still got the photos.
Yeah.
Although I shot for 2 years with the XT1 that's only got one SD card slot, and I didn't have a problem.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of talk when the XT1 first came out. It was like, oh, it can't be a pro camera because it hasn't got dual slots, and what if something goes down? And does that ever really happen? I mean, I know it so rarely happens to people, and when it does, you tend to sort of drill down to them. And they say, well, I shoot on a series of very small cards all throughout the wedding day, and I'm constantly putting them in and putting them out, rather than so. I didn't have a problem with it, and I didn't see it as this can't be a professional camera because it doesn't have 2 slots, because only recently did cameras have 2 slots.
Right.
So and people shot professionally before then, so, you know.
My 5D Mark I has only one card slot.
Exactly. So I never worry about those discussions, and I never worried about the thought that if I rocked up to a wedding when I first started shooting Fuji, and that thought of rocking up to a wedding with like really small cameras that were smaller than a lot of the guests had a lot more expensive and pro spec cameras than I was using to shoot the wedding. But that what tool you choose to use isn't the issue. It's the fact of what sort of photographer you are.
Yes. Although it's always a great feeling when you're walking up with your Fuji, and the person has their the huge Canon or Nikon camera with the big 70 to 200, and it's like, oh yeah, I just don't want to get in your way. I'm like, how's your back? How are you enjoying this day?
Yeah, I know.
What are you using? And I would pull out my Fuji XE2, and I had the 35 millimeter lens attached to it. I'm like, this.
I know, and it's not, and it's just nice. I mean, I tend to keep mine on little holsters on my belt rather than having straps.
Yeah.
And literally, I've got a jacket on, just to carry 2 or 3 spare batteries, and that sort of hangs over the top of my camera. So the fact that it doesn't really look like I've got any cameras on me at all, although I'll just tend to sort of just carry one in the hand all the time, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's me for a wedding. I've not got belts with different lenses on or a flash standing by. Literally, I'll pick the 2 lenses I'm going to use for the day. And that'll probably stay on for the whole day, and I won't change. And then in the evening, I'll go down to one camera with the flash on a sync cord and possibly the 10 to 24 zoom on for dance floor, and that's it. That's me done for the day, and I like that.
So what is the flash that you're using?
I'm using the very, very small. Is it the EF X20? Fuji's own little sort of brick of a flash. It's just like it's I don't know what the size, it's just the size of sort of 2 matchboxes.
Right.
But I was experimenting one day. I thought, I'll shoot a little bit of flash on the dance floor, and dragged a sync cord out on this little flash that I had, rather than using a big sort of, the Canon ones or the Nissin ones or anything like that. And it's lovely because it just sits in the palm of my hand, and the camera's in my other hand, and on a little sync cord, I can just get that little bit of separation rather than having it on top of the camera, just to give me a little bit of sculpting light.
Yeah.
And I can either shoot the flash high to give a sort of light from above, or if I got the camera quite low, sometimes I'll bring the flash in from below, so you don't get sort of arms causing shadows across faces and things like that. You can just sort of stick it low and into people's faces, and it works. For me, it works a treat.
I'm actually going to try that this next weekend. I'm renting it just to see if I like it, and I'm going to be doing it just for that. Because right now my hang up right now is the procession inward. There is the cake cutting, which is there's just so much devastation happening during that cake cutting. I don't want to miss a frame.
You again, cake cuttings are slightly different in the US than they are in the UK. In the UK, they're really sedate. They literally stand behind a cake. They push the knife into the cake to create one slice.
Yeah.
Not just one cut. And then they go, right, that's it. We've done it. It's literally 30 seconds done. And that is the cake cut moment. And it's never a moment. And
right.
It's always, you take a shot of it because it's just they've done it and it's a sort of record of the day, but generally nothing exciting happens.
Oh my God! Here sometimes it's flat out fight,
mayhem, isn't it?
Oh, all right. So let's trade stories here. Here in the States, we have something called the bouquet and garter toss.
Yeah.
Do you guys have that?
Occasionally, there'll be a bouquet toss. It's very rare these days. Very rare that anybody throws the bouquet, but occasionally they'll just decide, I'm going to throw the bouquet. And it's a sort of ad hoc, unorganized thing that sort of a half a dozen people trickle up to. It's never a great moment.
Yeah.
The garter with the groom going under, and is it taking the garter off with his teeth and all that?
Yeah.
Sort of
there's creative ways of doing that.
We don't do that at all.
Oh man, I envy you.
None of that. I have had it at the old wedding where the couple have been American or they've had American relatives and they've done it, and you go, great, that's lovely. So it is a fabulous moment, and you get the guys rushing forward to try and catch it.
Well, it depends on who catches the bouquet.
Yeah, and it's all good stuff. But no, we don't get that.
Okay, so you've seen it happen. The other thing that I'm surprised at, because I was describing it to a lot of my friends who are out of state, they haven't experienced this one. So you have the garter toss, you have the bouquet toss. The people who catch those items, the guy who caught the garter now has to put the garter on the girl who caught the bouquet. Does that happen?
No, no. I've not heard of that. I mean, it's starting to become like a whole chain of things. Then something could happen after that. That sounds really.
That's usually what the intention is, and
right.
It is.
No.
Yeah,
you've got me on that one.
I'm not proud.
No. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing in the world. I'm just saying I've never seen it happen. I mean, I've seen various wedding games, and I shot an all-German wedding once, and the Germans are very big on arranging wedding games. So there's always a series of games that the bride and groom are made to play, and they start holding up the shoe game.
Yes, we have that.
But they told me of this thing that happens apparently in Germany. I don't know if it still does, and if you've got any German listeners, I'm sure they'll let you know, whereby at some point in the evening, while the bride and groom are still at the wedding reception, if they live nearby, what's going to happen is a lot of guys from the wedding are going to leave. They're going to go to their house, they're going to get in, and they're going to put everything that they own on the front lawn.
Oh, my God.
For when they go back home after the wedding.
Wow.
And so
it's not like we had anything planned after the wedding.
Yeah, exactly. So the bride and groom, after the biggest day of their life, and they've been up for 18 hours or whatever it is, they then get home and everything they own is on their lawn, and they have to put it in their house before they can go to bed.
Wow.
Now, if that was going to happen at a wedding that I knew and I was at, I think I'd stay. I think that might be great. For me, that would just sort of bookend the day very nicely and be a nice sort of story.
Yeah. And maybe help them put everything back in.
Oh, no. I'd photograph them putting it back in.
Photojournalist to the letter.
Yeah, you're on your own, guys.
Wait, how much is the tip? Oh, all right, maybe.
Yeah.
Right on. That's so funny. No, that's about the only weird thing I have from New England weddings anyway. The last thing I saw most recently was during the bouquet toss. One girl caught it, but one of the bridesmaids wanted it. And this is the only time, and I regret not capturing this, although probably is a good thing that I didn't capture this. Just like after the whole thing ends, the bridesmaid just runs at the girl and just clear on tackles her.
Brilliant.
I'm like, oh my God, it just happened at the corner of my eye. She just
man, I would have been all
blindside. I mean, they were all in good fun. Like I got the after effects, but it's like I did not expect that.
If you caught it, there you go. There's your fearless shot straight in. But,
right.
You just reminded me actually. Before I was even photographing weddings, so I didn't. It's about the only wedding I'd ever been to as a guest. At some point we all had to go outside to say goodbye to the bride and groom as they were going off in the car.
Yeah.
And so I ambled out with everybody else, and something again out of the corner of my eye, something came flying towards me. So I caught it, and it was the bouquet. And I was like, oh shit, I know what this means. So I literally just threw it in the air again. I thought, I can't,
keep it going.
I'm not gonna be that guy that caught the bouquet and gets tackled by a bridesmaid.
Right.
Although maybe I should.
Right on. Oh, that's awesome. Those are awesome stories. I gotta say. So circling back to Fuji.
Yeah, which we should.
Right. At least bookend with it.
Yeah.
But so the whole system, I mean, clearly it's working for you. Your photography is just absolutely brilliant. How has this system has it opened up new possibilities for you? Like what is the future for Andrew?
Well, I think, I'll answer that in two ways. I think because again, I see a lot of discussion on the internet, and I get a lot of people message me about working with the Fuji system, about what they, when they're thinking about coming to it and stuff like that. And
I mean, in a sense, it's kind of like a second coming of like a Wild West for photography.
Oh yeah. I mean, what I'd say, I mean, when I started, it literally was full time with Fuji. I would count really on the sort of release date of the XT1.
Yeah.
I pre-ordered 2 of those, and they arrived day one. And from then on, I was in my head shooting weddings with Fuji. Doing all my professional work with Fujis. And I think that's the way you have to sort of go. I mean, I literally I arrived. The first 2 weddings I went to shoot Fuji, I did have my Canon gear in the boot, as I know a lot of people do, but I didn't touch it. I made it work for me. I persevered. The firmware on the XT1 to start off with, and the way it worked, the AF was a bit off. It was quirky. It was difficult to work with sometimes. You had to sort of find your way through it. You had to adapt a little bit the way you were used to working.
Yeah.
To make the camera work for you, and you had to shoot slower, and you had to be more considered in what you did. It was less responsive, so therefore you had to frame things a little bit slower, be a little bit less reactive. And I think that helped to create better photographs for me and a better way of thinking around weddings. But what I did do was I persevered with it. I see a lot of people that sort of say, I'm now going full-time Fuji. They buy all the gear. They go to a wedding. They put it to their eye. They start going, but it's not a DSLR. It doesn't work like a DSLR. And they throw it away, and they run to the car, and they get out their Nikons, or they get out their Canons. And fine. Anybody that you should work with something you feel comfortable working with. But I just knew that these cameras were going to be the things that were going to make me work in a better way, get me better results, hopefully make me a better photographer. So I stuck with them, and I really had to coax the most I could out of them to get the results that I was looking for. And they've got, as firmware as I mean, God bless Fuji. They literally, with the release of firmware 4, version 4, they gave us a new camera for free.
Yes.
The update on the XT1 with firmware 4 was just like, rather than a lot of other companies that go, oh, you've now got to buy the XT2.
Yes.
They went, it's the XT1, but we've made some improvements. Just do this, and we'll give you an electronic shutter. We'll give you all this sort of stuff for free. We'll make the AF so much better. And they just did that, and that was fantastic. So now I don't see the argument for going, oh, it's not a DSLR. I can't work with this. It's, because for me, coming from the early incarnation of the XT1 to how it is now, it's just so much more a responsive camera. But for me, going to the Fuji was that I could do everything off the top plate without going into the menus. Therefore, I could just keep looking around and not be looking in the back of my camera. But also, it was a smaller body for me. It was smaller lenses. It meant that I felt that it was going to be less intimidating, and I could get closer to the wedding.
Yes.
In the middle of it, and people wouldn't go, oh God, here comes that photographer. Because I never get that. I mean, there are arguments on both sides, but I will say there are shots that I have got, and there's shots that I show in my portfolio that I could not have got with a DSLR, because literally my presence with a big black block in front of my face would have changed that moment. But whereas with the Fuji, it's a small camera. I can pre-focus it, or I can just very quickly have it up to take a shot, take it away, and nobody cares, nobody notices, or nobody feels that what I've done is take something away from that moment. So I can get those intimate storytelling, emotion-filled shots that I'm looking for.
Yeah. That's incredible. It's Fuji has done some really remarkable things.
Yeah.
And I am, first of all, I mean, I said this in the last podcast, I love the fact that they kept the film in Fujifilm, where they hold true to their image quality first and foremost. Because otherwise I don't know why anybody would want to stay because it does require such a. The learning curve varies, but it is a learning curve to hang with these cameras.
Oh, absolutely.
And again, like you mentioned before, the firmware updates, it's always a surprise.
Yeah, and I think and that is great customer support, and they're going to engender great customer loyalty with that. I mean, the future of social photography has to be mirrorless cameras, and you've got Sony, which is doing great work. You've got Olympus, I've not used the Sonys. I've used Olympus, and again, I didn't really get on with it as a system. I didn't find the handling of it as intuitive as I found the Fuji's. Maybe that was because I went to the Fuji first, but I just like the look I get out of the Fuji, and I like the way it feels in my hand and the responsiveness of it. And I think the Fujifilm thing. I mean, I don't tend to use the built-in film simulations but I know a lot of people do. And I think the look that they get that Fujifilm is still in there, because the look that they've given to their film simulations is actually very film-like. It's really good.
Yeah.
And I've seen some great results with it. So I know people that do shoot, if they want black and white, they'll have a black and white print, and they'll know the shot's black and white, and they'll shoot it to a JPEG, and that'll be their black and white, whether it be, across green or whatever they want it to be. And again, the sort of classic chrome, maybe that's their color look, and they can just do it all in camera, and again it makes the processing afterwards so much quicker.
When you mentioned Olympus, one of the things that I was looking into when I was kind of shopping around for cameras, one shop in particular was showing off their Olympus cameras. The clerk happened to own one, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I love this," and showing me the photos. And they were great photos, but they were just pictures. But it's weird. Again, like you mentioned before, that tangible, intangible quality of the image, the end product is just so much more alive in a Fuji photo than I think any other camera system out there. I think that makes a huge difference in why we love this this camera system.
Yeah, it certainly works for me, and I would say it also has a lot to do with the stunning quality of the Fuji lenses.
Yes,
I mean there's it's gonna be hard for me to wrestle the 35 f2 off my camera this wedding season, because I've just loved it, and I tend to shoot most of the day, depending on the size of the venue, but I tend to be sort of mainly 16 mil and 35 mil.
Yeah.
In the Fuji terms, which is 24 full frame and 50 mil full frame.
Right.
And that works for me. Last year I was shooting 24, 85, the 16 mil and the 56 mil. Mm-hmm. And I've sort of gone down to the 35 mil just to get a slightly wider look on my what I consider my close-up. So my longest lens now is sort of 50 mil, and I do like the look of that, because it's again down to storytelling for me.
Yeah.
If there are some portraits, if we're going to disappear and do a little bit of portraiture, I'm gonna grab the 56 from my bag and put that on. Yep. Just because that's a beautiful lens for portrait.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
And just the dropping away of focus behind it is gorgeous at 1.2, and I can just work with that. But again, my style is very much in terms of portraiture, I tend to sort of get couples and just go, right, there's some awesome light. You guys, you just be in that light and chat with each other, and I just tend to work around them and just take a few almost candid looking shots.
I do that as well, and I just try to be right, and I just try to be as funny as possible. And for me, it's difficult because it usually turns out, I'm like, I'm Polish, and that usually gets them laughing for some reason.
Oh, okay.
One day I may be offended.
I just tend to leave them alone. I just tend to just have a chat about what's going on and talk about something nice. And that the only direction I'll sort of give if it looks like it's going a bit south is just sort of just talk about nice things. Don't talk about whether you've booked the holiday insurance or what's going on. Just have a little think about what's just happened, and then I'll just photograph around that.
Yeah.
And if people look awkward, we just move somewhere else. I guess let's just, But again, my portrait sessions are probably 10 minutes maximum.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Well, I mean, it's part of, the couples that I work with, the approach that I have, what I show on my website. It's very much about very candid, unposed weddings. So the couples that book me don't want to spend much of the time, if any, posing for the camera. They just want to know that there's going to be somebody there that's going to photograph the wedding, and they're going to have some photographs afterwards that tell the story, but they don't necessarily want to spend the day reenacting the story for a photographer. So
yes, that is true.
So those are the sort of couples that find me and that I work with. And so, family shots, again, if we're going to do some family shots, they'll be 10 minutes. It'll literally be, the bride and groom, the bride's family, the groom's family, the bride's mum and dad, the groom's mum and dad, bridesmaids, groomsmen. That's my formal list done.
Yeah.
And we move on.
Right on. I try to keep it to that too.
Yeah, because I think that's the standard, and that's what everybody would love, and that's what everybody, wants to happen. But I hear stories of that's my capsule list, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, but the day before the wedding they emailed me with a list of 40 formal shots, and now that's going to take an hour and a half, and I don't get that. I never get that, because we openly discuss it before the wedding day, and they say, oh, we don't, we're not keen on standing around on our wedding day, but mum and dad want something, and they go, of course, and I think it's quite important. I think it's, you as a family, you come together so rarely that it's good to have a record of the people that were there from your family or your friends or whoever you want on your wedding day. But you could put them all in one shot. You don't have to say, now all the cousins, now all the aunts, now all the uncles. I never get that part. I don't understand why you can't just go, let's get family together, click. There we are.
Right on.
We've done it, and it is just a record. It's not, you're not trying to get the most amazing, not trying to get everybody's individual personality into one shot in a group. It's never going to happen.
You want to hear a horror story?
Oh, please. I love them.
Oh, you better sit down for this one, because this
awesome.
will. So
I'll follow it. I'll see if I can top it. Right. You start.
Oh, good. So I was doing this, wedding for an agency a few years back, probably about 4 years ago now. Yeah. It was in Harvard Square, in Harvard Yard. I actually did get to park my car in Harvard Yard, and the bride had a shot list 4 pages long.
Whoa.
One of the, and mind you, this was a big wedding party. There was at least, I believe, 10 groomsmen and 10 bridesmaids, one of whom was a robot.
Squeeze me.
They hired a robot to come in from Florida to be one of the groomsmen.
I mean, I'm sorry, an actual robot, not a human being dressed as a robot.
Not a human being. It was a robot dressed in a tuxedo. And by robot, I mean it was this person controlling it with a remote control in the background.
Oh God!
So trying to pose the robot into the formals was a bit difficult. Finally, I snap. I'm like, can somebody move number 5 into position? And nobody got the short circuit reference, which made me cry.
Oh.
And it was just one thing after the other. And apparently every single vendor that she was dealing with had a similar page of 4 pages long of instructions on what to do. And everybody was flipping out on me. They were like, can you believe this? I'm like, I'm not associated with her. I'm just hired to do this day.
Yeah. Oh
and
my God.
So the DJ, the last one was the DJ to snap, because he was given this huge laundry list of songs to play. Most of them were old 80s commercials from obscure products. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
The groom was some sort of like computer engineer from like, I don't know, MIT, and the bride was some Harvard graduate, Harvard PhD graduate. So it's one of those moments where it's like, you're so incredibly smart that you've gone full circle into obscurity, and
So because everybody gets down on the dance floor to the jingle for Tide.
I've never
seen. Don't they?
Moses couldn't have cleared water this fast.
Oh my goodness!
That's how fast this dance floor. And the bride and groom were there just dancing a ballroom dance, and it's like, wow, that
is quite a day.
After that song, the DJ pulled out that CD that she made for them, just chucked it right in back of him, and just went on with his stuff. He's like, I don't care anymore.
No, which was the best thing to do, and he probably got the party going a little anyway.
Oh yeah, and the robot, to its credit, was a good dancer.
Oh cool. Oh well, at least it was good for something.
Yeah.
which is fabulous. The story I was going to tell was about formals, and I was doing some formals one day in a lovely place in North Wales. Beautiful. It's like a little village that you sort of hire for the day. It's absolutely gorgeous. And there was a village green, and we were just doing a few family shots. So I put the family together, and it was sort of stepping forward and adjusting people and stepping back. And I did this a couple of times, and people were wandering around. And then I just sort of moved somebody into the right position so we can see them, step back, and I put my foot down, and I could feel something slightly squishy under my foot, and the whole wedding party in front of me just sort of looked in horror and held their hands out and just went, no! And I just sort of put a little bit of pressure on the thing behind me, and I'd trodden on a baby.
Oh!
I stepped back, I trodden on a baby. Now it was one of the things that makes you sort of go, maybe I've lost this wedding now because I've trodden on a baby. But what had happened was this woman was, as people are, they just sort of was letting her baby express herself by just sort of crawling along. And I'd been using this area for 5 minutes. I knew exactly where I was, but it was just letting the baby wander. And I'd step back, bang, right on the baby, and the baby started crying. Of course, oh my God, what do you do? I just apologized and was apologizing. Oh my God. And for the whole rest of the day, I thought, this is it. I've lost this wedding. Everybody's going to hate me. I'm going to be I'm going to be the baby crusher or something. It's going to be the newspapers. Everybody. And then for the rest of the day, all the guests would sidle up to me and go, are you okay? That woman, she's a nightmare. She's awful. Really sorry. You okay? Can I buy you a drink? Which was like, oh, okay. It was a unifying thing because everybody hated us, so that was good. But
you win.
It's not every day that you go to a wedding and tread on a baby. So that's my formal wedding story.
You win.
I don't know. I think it's a tie because a robot. Not everybody has Hal at their wedding.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Oh wow, yeah, nightmares.
Excellent stuff. Oh, yes.
Awesome, Andrew. It's been awesome having you on.
It's been lovely. It's been a really good chat. I've really enjoyed it.
Why don't you tell the world where they could find you on the web?
They can find me. It's very simple. It says exactly what I do. I'm at documentary-wedding.com. So it's documentary-wedding.com. I'm also on Twitter at Billington Photo. You can find me on Instagram at Billington Photo. And if you just put into Facebook Andrew Billington Photography, or probably Andrew Billington as well, you can find me on Facebook. And I'm always happy if people want to message me, answer any questions about the Fuji system or just about the way I work. More than happy to answer people's queries. So get in touch in whatever way you want.
Very good. It's been awesome.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
No problem. Once again, we want to thank Andrew Billington for taking the time to talk with us, and it was a tremendous time. I had such a blast chatting with Andrew, and I have many more interviews to come, and hopefully we'll bring Andrew back for some more war stories. But thank you, everybody, for listening. Once again, follow the show at Xline Show on Instagram, Xline Show on Twitter, and go to thexline.com for more show notes. And you can always leave your 5-star rating on iTunes or whatever podcasting device that you have that will allow ratings of such. And again, I can't wait to share some great summer fun stories with the Fuji system. I have already photographed another wedding, and that was a ton of fun using the Fuji X-T1 and X-T10 together. And yeah, I mean, I have many more personal projects in the works, and can't wait to share that that's those stories when they actually happen. So thank you once again for listening. This has been episode 6. I will see you next time. The music for this episode comes from Ben Sound. If you're looking for royalty-free music for your shows, go ahead and check out www.bensound.com.